Now the Islamic system is pretty much the same. Not pretty much. In fact, I would submit that the system is so vehement in its approach to finding someone guilty that I don't think there's any system that holds such a high level of scrutiny to establish the guilt of an individual. So, if you take, for example, he said, yes, the Quran talks about the chopping of the hand. But is that all it says? If you look at the evidence, if you look at the requirement for the threshold, you will find, you know what, it becomes almost again...
almost impossible to reach.
Yes. But that is something that is objectively seen.
I understand that.
If you take it to what we would call the moral offenses, because honestly speaking, if I look at an individual as a human being, yes, I would suggest that any system of law ought to reflect the human being holistically. Not split the human being into X, Y, and Z.
Rational, emotional, all the different...
Absolutely. And when you do that, what has happened here is suddenly there's a distinction between what you would call moral and legal. So the question arises that a person is walking on the street in a park, and he sees a little one suddenly drop into the pond. If he does not save that child, has he committed an offense? The answer is no. But morally, we would find it repugnant. Now this distinction was made. Why? Because he hasn't actually committed any crime. Okay? Now that changed. Yes? There is now an act of omission. Yeah? Why? Because a situation arose which didn't reflect how human beings were feeling or how human beings ought to have addressed the situation. So, if you look at what you would call the moral crimes, yes, one of them being homosexuality, but if you look at the Islamic legal system, it is very specific about rules. It is very specific about, as I said, the commission of an act, okay, and the threshold of evidence that is required. Yeah, I don't find it a problem. The problem arises when we have made the distinction between what we would consider to be moral and what we would consider to be legal. However, if we are to, and this is the presupposition argument, yes, the Islamic system is based, as you rightly pointed out, on the supreme authority of the Creator. Why is it the supreme authority? Logic dictates to us, wait a minute, if we are to suppose that there is a Creator, the Creator created everything, then logic dictates that the Creator would know exactly what we are all about, because the Creator created us. Now, if we were to look at a human being holistically, would we then have to develop a legal system which would address the human being holistically or as an individual with pieces attached to the brain? Now, and we touched on it. You see, adultery was an offense, it isn't. Homosexuality was an offense, it isn't. Why? Because we think, and I use this word, we think we understand the things better now than we did before. And there's nothing wrong with that. I would take it one step further and say, okay, I can agree with that. But are we suggesting that we have so much evidence, so definitive, to be able to establish conclusively that this is only going to be the way forward, and in 20 years we may not find anything that is going to change this particular reasoning? I would submit that that is not the case.
But there is, we have law commissions, don't we? We have processes by which laws are...
Yep.
Could I ask, in a parallel sort of universe, where every society was pluralistic. So there's lots of... So if every country was like Britain, let's say, with Muslims, Jews, Christians, Sikhs, you know, London is just every possible place of worship, every sort of religion. What I'm trying to tease out is would an Islamic state be appropriate there, or are you talking about an Islamic state in Islamic lands? If you know,
I see what you mean. You're absolutely right. What I would say to that is, look, as that scholar pointed out when he was asked which one is the one that is the closest to an Islamic state, and he said the United Kingdom. Because if you look at London, for example, mandirs, masjids, churches, you name it, they are there. Okay? Take ourselves a little bit back into history, and we find that one of the caliphs, when he was traveling to Jerusalem, ensured that the churches or the synagogues, etc., were not touched. They were not damaged. If there is an Islamic state in the United Kingdom, which is what a lot of people fear, yeah, so much has been written about, take back the country, Sharia law is starting to come into the... I look at these statements, yes, and I look at these claims, and I think to myself, how I wish these particular individuals would take the time out first to understand what they're talking about before they speak. Yeah. And we find that half the things are scaremongering, yes. I would suggest that if I looked at the United Kingdom and I said, right, okay, tomorrow the system of Islam, the legal system, is being implemented. You know what? I can't see so many changes taking place in the legal system, apart from a few which directly may affect you as an individual. Yes? Certain things have been mentioned. Now here is the crux. Homosexuality, as an example, is not one that has been specifically criminalized in the Quran as the primary source. But there are secondary sources, just like any legal system. So you look at the secondary sources, and there may be a criminal sanction on it. Again, like I said, you have to look at what the criminal sanction would be. Okay? Now, will that make you uncomfortable? Definitely. Yeah, it would make me uncomfortable. But then, on the flip side, I said, look, it's making me uncomfortable the fact that it is permitted. Now, this is a matter of how individuals approach things. Hence the need for an authority that overrides our beliefs, our views of life, our particular concerns on our sexuality, etc. We don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. It's the problem is, where does that authority come from? That transcends.
That's it.
Because, you know, what is the source of that authority?
Yeah.
And have you... there's a famous American philosopher called John Rawls.
Yeah.
So, have you heard of him?
I've heard of him, yeah.
His famous book, A Theory of Justice. And I think that in that book, he sets out a sort of an experiment whereby, a thought experiment, where people are blindfolded to their who and what they are going to be in life. And they sit round a table and they create the society. So there's a debate at the moment about grammar schools in this country. The only people who support grammar schools are the people who think their children are bright enough to get into grammar school.
Right.
Not the people who've got children with low ability.
Yes.
They're not going to be supporting grammar schools. Similarly, people who are hostile to accepting Syrian refugees into our country are not Syrian refugees.
Yeah.
Or have never been refugees. Yeah. We approach we construct what we believe to be an ideal world on the basis of our experiences of who we are. Rawls's argument was that if we were blindfolded, so you didn't know whether you were going to be Muslim or Jew or Christian or homosexual or heterosexual, rich, poor, male, female, you would seek to construct a society that wherever you were, whoever you became, whoever you were embodied as, in that society, you would have a fair chance in life. And that's the sort of approach, that's where I'm coming from.
Yes, I understand.
In human societies, people have different, modern societies, people have different conceptions of the good, people have different conceptions of the divine, and I do not have any prejudice against Sharia at all. The newspapers that you sell promote it massively.
Yes, they do.
The Mail, the Sun, absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
but they promote ignorance in so many different, so many other areas. I would seek that within a society, it's a little bit like, it's not a very good, but I'm quite interested in music, but I like sort of different traditions, and that inspire me at different moments, and I like fusions of different traditions, and it's the sense that I suppose I have no problem with elements of Sharia being adopted and also suddenly there was a Lord Gough died recently. I read his obituary, and they got a very senior judge, and it said that he derived lots of rulings from reading German law.
Yeah.
So he was open to other
yes.
Legal traditions, and for me, Shabir, that's where sort of I am, and where it's almost a kind of fixed mind, I suppose, and that's never a positive thing to be have a fixed mindset, but that rolls in idea of we say what we say because of who we are.
Yeah.
If we were different, we would say something different.
Yeah.
Now, the point I'm trying to say is, with disability, sexuality, it's easy from the position of X to kind of legislate about Y.
Yes.
But if you were Y, you might have a different view.
Absolutely.
And that's where I'm sort of, on the basis, I've been to lots of countries, and I kind of see what the Islamic scholars are saying about this country, because in this country there's a sort of, although by no means is this country perfect, but we've not gone for rigid kind of fixed. We've kind of muddled through, if I can put it like that.
Absolutely. Stephen, that if you look at it from that perspective, you see, you're absolutely right. It is like it is akin to a time in Islamic history when there was a huge famine that took place. As a result of which, the authority, being the Caliph, he had actually suspended, do you know the punishment for theft? He had suspended it temporarily. Now, if you think about this, if it was supreme authority, being the Creator, who has legislated against a certain thing, how then does a human being take the authority to suspend something that was legislated by the Creator? Now, if you look at it from the traditional perspective of how you ought to view a message from God and its supreme authority, is it logical to have the power to suspend something that is supposed to be supremely, how can you put it, authoritative?
No, not.
But it happened.
Yes.
How does that happen? Well, you will find that, when you look at Islam, primary reason for why, and I alluded to it in the statement, this day have we perfected your way for you and given you Islam as a favor to you as humanity. Now, if we think about it, I, as a human being, and I touched on it again, I would love every other human being to have the same as I have. Yes? It'd be little, it'd be large, whatever, it doesn't matter. I would want the same. Now, does that mean because I'm of a male gender, the females are excluded?
No.
That would be silly. Yeah? Now, if we look at the system itself, it is asking human beings, okay, the Creator knows about you, the Creator has put you there, the Creator has given you the rules by which to live, okay? These rules necessarily sometimes will include things which we personally will not like. Whether we like it or not, we will not like them. So, as an example, killing someone. We just find it naturally abhorrent. Why would you kill? But there are some people who love killing. Yeah? Now, you think, how is that possible? But there are distinctions here. There are human beings who feel like something. There are some who feel like... look at this. You talk about art. Yeah? Are you familiar with French?
Yes.
You are. Great stuff. I'll probably pronounce it completely wrong. But I'm going to do it anyway. Yes? Baisez-moi.
Where is it?
Baisez-moi.
Spell it.
Baisemi.
Go on, translate it.
Right. Like I said, I probably pronounced it wrong. FU. That's what it stands for. Yeah? Or FME. That's what it stands for. I probably, like I said, pronounced it completely wrong. But you know what? A movie was made of that name. That movie was banned. Why was it banned? Because it was showing two ladies, okay? Who, there it is. Well done, thank you very much. Yeah? You see, that movie was banned. Why? Because two ladies in that movie, okay, were supposed to have been abused by men. And then they decide to take revenge by killing each and every man who they associated with thereafter. But that's nothing new about a movie, you know, depicting revenge, etc. No. The issue with the movie was the fact that what was shown was actually real. The actors actually performed those acts in the movie and they were graphically shown. So where there was a scene of rape, it actually shows actual penetration. Do you call that art?
No.
Would we call it art? But that is what it is considered. So can you see the perspectives change here? Yeah. But the fact is, there are certain things we as human beings may collectively agree. So prior to the 1980s, okay, we had a lot of wife swapping taking place. Yes, we had a lot of orgies taking place. As soon as, apart from the STDs, as soon as AIDS appeared, okay, things, everybody stopped. They slowed down. But it is coming back up again. You have got Ashley Madison, the website. It was Ashley Madison, wasn't it?
Ashley Madison.
It was, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a website that actively encourages people to commit what we would consider to be adultery. Yes, and there are many. Yeah, well, the poor fellow is a different matter. Okay, last week there was an interview of this gentleman. This gentleman. Yeah, there was an interview of this gentleman who had developed two websites. The names of the websites are, one of them is polygamy.com. Yeah, and the other one the other one is to the effect that I want more than one wife.com. Yeah, and he was being interviewed. Now, he said something very, very interesting, although a lot of people thought, you know what, he's just pulling people's legs. But what he said was this. He said, look, because he made a comparison with homosexuality. Yeah? He said, there are many people who are born this way. Just like homosexuals think they are born that way, I'm telling you, I'm born that way that I need more than one wife. Now, on a moral...
I understand ultimately what you're saying.
From a moral perspective, there's nothing wrong. Now, the issue, as you said, the authority that is promulgating this, our issue is there. Yeah? But one day, a person had asked me about this in that context, and I'm just mentioning it. They said, what is wrong with homosexuality? Okay? So I said, look, let us assume no God, no creator, leave creator out. What are we left with to determine how we have arrived at where we have arrived? Well, in absence of any other that I'm not aware of, yeah, or rather that I'm aware of, it is the theory of evolution, okay? The scholars in the field have developed a system of how to view evolution, okay? And one of the things they always point back to is how Charles Darwin had mentioned it, and how he specifically talked about the adaptation, the changes by natural selection, okay? So when I was talking to this person, I said, if we think about it logically, yes, leave morality aside, leave our personal views aside, let's just look at the action itself.
You're talking about the continuation of the species wouldn't happen.
Let's look. If we look at it from that perspective, the issue is not whether there would be continuation. The issue is that did natural selection choose that particular path? We don't ascribe intelligence to natural selection, yes, but the point is, did it ascribe a certain path in which, logically speaking, again, leave morality and everything aside, purely on a functional basis, did it legislate a particular method of species continuing? The answer would be a definitive yes.
Of course, yeah.
But if that is the case, and it clearly is established, again, morality and everything aside, if that is the case, then we have to conclude that if we were to take the creator out of it, from this perspective, then the view is that natural selection deemed it, and we use it, deemed it, because we are ascribing intelligence to it if we say it like that, but it deemed the male and female relationship to be the ideal one to be able to have the species reproduce. But the issue is this, sorry, I'll just finish. Yeah, the issue is this, that if that is the case from a natural selection perspective, then I would suggest that any other method of that action, leaving the morality element aside, that action would not be considered natural selection. What would it be considered? Well, we have got an opposite of natural, unnatural, okay? But that is a what you call an argument in thought, okay?
I think that one of the things you said, and then we
looked at the time. Yes.
One of the things you said which is interesting. Which
Stephen, can I just stop you for 1 minute?
Yes.
Okay, that's it done. Sorted. Sorry.
Carry on.
Yeah, sorry, Stephen.
I was just going to say that about human beings.
Yes.
You said about the legal system should, in a sense, the human being is almost a metaphor for the legal system. It should have the different elements that a human being has. They should be present in
the holistic perspective. Yes.
And I think that that's any kind of whether we're talking about evolution. These things tend to be quite reductionist in the sense that they do not do justice to the complexity of human life and human existence.
Yes.
And it is, I think the what I need to, because in Europe there was an Islamic state, wasn't there?
Sorry?
There was an Islamic state in Europe
until
the 15th century. Yeah. There's something interesting about looking at historical precedents in terms of what happened, but I feel the area at the time sort of clearly there are certain aspects that the state, in certain what you might call moral aspects, such as child abuse, legislates in that area, and that's criminal. People may say, well, I have a proclivity to such behaviour, and whether you say that or not, in a sense, whether that can be established sort of psychologically or not is irrelevant. It's a criminal offence, and it's as simple as that. So in some areas, yes, there does need to be legislation in what you might call the moral sphere. Wife battery was once seen as a private matter. Well, that's what happens within that. There's laws against. In France, if you ignore an accident, it's a criminal offence. If you don't stop your car and get out and help. And to me, there is. My kind of what you've said has given me food for thoughts hugely. There is an issue about, I suppose, the rights of the individual, and I know this language is probably alien within Islam, but under any hypothetical Islamic state. And I did a questionnaire the other day, and do you consider yourself to be in charge in your own life? And that's an interesting question, because it depends what some people interpret. What does it mean to be in charge? I could say, well, global capital is in charge of my life. I'm not in charge of it. And that I think that's the sort of fundamental issue.
Actually, Stephen, sorry, have you finished?
Yes, yeah.
There's something strange that I may say, which a lot of people may not actually have seen it. the right of the individual is absolutely fundamental in Islam. Have you heard that before?
No.
Well, there you are. It is absolutely. If we take it, as one day there was this fellow talking to me, yeah, and he says to me, I want my sister to get married. Yeah. And he says, you know how it is in our culture. We have to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So the conversation progressed, and I said to him, I said, listen, every human being, once they reach the age of what we would call criminal responsibility, will be responsible for their own actions. On that basis, when we die, yes, if we take this to its logical conclusion, a day of resurrection, a day of judgment is going to be based on an individual. Picture the scene here, Stephen. Okay, Shabir, on the day of judgment, why did you do X? Ask him. Okay, why did you do Y? Ask him. Why did you do A, B, C, D? Ask him. Why do you keep telling me ask him? Because he told me I must do X, Y, and Z. Nothing to do with me. Can you just imagine the picture? The logic is there. The Prophet, peace be upon him, made it clear to Muslims, and it applies equally to all human beings. You seek knowledge. It is, there are certain words. The word used is fard. Okay? It is compulsory to seek knowledge. These are the prophetic sayings. Yeah? What do we mean? When we are seeking information, what do we get? We will get a better perspective of what we are trying to understand. Now, I know that if I look at Islam in totality, it is clear that the foremost is individual rights. Now, you know, a lot of Muslims who may have sat here will think, what's Shabir on about? Actually, and I mean this humbly speaking, if you look at the sources, they are very clear that the individual comes first. So as an example, if somebody claimed that I was indulging in practices that were illegal, whether it's adultery, whether it's fornication, whether it is homosexuality, whatever it is, the accusation doesn't make it an offense. There is a system, yeah? There is a process. That process is going to ask, okay, so you are saying that he committed adultery? Answer, yes. Okay, did you actually view what happened? Because the threshold of
very high.
It's not only high, the individual who made the allegation will have had to have seen actual penetration. Now, can you do that? Honestly, unless you've got a camera right close, it's impossible. Now, the Prophet laid down a legal maxim. If you find an element of doubt, suspend the punishment. Honestly speaking to you, Stephen, this principle applied in its closest form in the legal systems here, innocent till proven guilty. This was a maxim employed by the Prophet, peace be upon him, over 1,400 years ago. The problem is how, as you rightly pointed out, we have associated certain language to mean religious, and so we just discard it. And certain language to mean secular, yes, let's look at what it says. It's more rational. Anything to do with the word religion, irrational, unreasonable, really? Well, have you actually considered what it said? If you do, you will find you will agree with what it says. Now, on that point only, I am saying it, and I would urge any Muslim or any non-Muslim to look at the sources, and you will see primary number one is the right of the individual. But that does not necessarily mean that the individual rights then overtake or
everything else.
Yeah, if the legal system has said it, and you know, you pointed it out appropriately, that if you were to abuse a child, yes, it is a criminal offense. Nowadays, if you sleep with your wife when she did not intend you to sleep with her, it can constitute rape.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, that act itself, is that a moral act or is that a physical act? Which one would it be?
I'm not a lawyer.
No problem.
So
We're
therefore,
started with just...
It's both, I think. It's a physical manifestation of a moral or a thought.
You see, you're absolutely... A physical manifestation of a moral thought. But now, what is being criminalized is not the moral thought, is it? It's the act. And that's the distinction I made at the start. That it is so clear that the threshold is so high that if you look at it, anybody who truly understood what the law in the system of Islam actually says would not disagree with it. But if you take what we call buzzwords, Sharia, chopping hands. Sharia, stone to death. Sharia, hanging.
In some ways, there's what's responsible for, there's partially responsible for this mischaracterization is the tabloid media and right-wing politicians, the likes of Donald Trump and people like that. But also there's some of, I know this is mediated through the newspapers, etc. But so what I understand to be happening, let's put it that way, under some Islamic, under some countries that have predominantly Muslim populations.
The one regimes I think may be appropriate also.
That certainly does not correspond to what you have said, and I'm not saying that you have a deeper understanding, obviously, than, and it seems that is a source of anxiety, for people, and you're always incredibly enlightening and edifying, and I genuinely mean that. Thank you for the wonderful food.
I tell you something, Stephen. Sorry, just to touch on it. A group of companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, approached him one day and told him, "O Prophet of God, we have these very weird thoughts coming into our heads, and we find it difficult." I'm loosely translating. He says to them, "Look, you will think about many things, to such an extent that you will think, okay, we came from God, where did God come from?" He says, when you get to that stage, calm down. Because to think about something like that is highly complicated. Okay? Just like thinking about what is life, the definition, yes? It led to one of a famous scientist also, perhaps not because of that, committing suicide. But if you think about it, free thought is not sanctioned. In Islam, me thinking funny is not a criminal offense. Me turning to Muhammad Ali and telling Muhammad Ali, do you seriously think there is a creator? There are two ways I'm looking at this. Either I'm genuinely doubting it, or I'm asking the question to extract certain information so that we can have a better understanding. But if I did this, yes, and the Muslim community started vilifying me, yes, because I dared to ask what would be considered a normal question, yes, then the problem needs to be addressed. I am saying, look, can there really be a creator if the creator has given us information in the Quran, and I'm restricting it to the Quran because that's the perspective I'm taking, if the creator has talked about it, has talked about how the communication between the creator and the human beings is, and that communication link, as the creator actually says in the Quran, you cannot see me directly, but I will inspire you, or from behind a veil, so that when the communication took place, every element that is touched upon is clear that it is not what you would call a physical interaction. If it isn't a physical interaction, okay, then logic tends to dictate that what cannot be seen has to be investigated. It's logical, yes? We verify certain things which we consider to be scientifically verified after testing, after researching, etc. Okay? But that doesn't mean that because we cannot see something, it does.
It doesn't, I understand that. Yeah,
it doesn't exist. We've got many issues. But I would humbly submit to you, Stephen, if you look at the subject matter, whether it's homosexuality, adultery, the cutting off of hands, apostasy is one that he touched on. Again, this requires sometimes a free thought process to establish whether there is some reason behind what is being said or not. I would submit that if you look at Islamic law, we call it a Sharia, yes, it makes a very clear distinction between what is of benefit to human beings and what is of disbenefit to human beings, on the basis or the proviso that the authority that is providing this is the ultimate authority, being the Creator. That's the view.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're most welcome, Stephen.